Chapter 38. Charlie. There are experiences in life that make you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. Like watching your father be led away in handcuffs after learning that he allegedly committed the largest financial fraud in the history of the world. Like arriving in a new city, a fake ID in your pocket, and realizing the rest of your life would be built on a lie. Like meeting someone who made you want more than the half life you thought you would be enough. That life you thought would be enough. Like today. Today had made me question everything: my strength, my fortitude, my intelligence, my sanity. I sat huddled on a steel bench in the bin at Rikers Island, my body shuddering as the adrenaline seeped away. I brought my knees up and wrapped my arms around them. Tears tracked down my aching face to soak into the gray cotton of my jumpsuit. My left hot eye had already swelled shut. Uh-oh. The last 18 hours had taken me down the rabbit hole, and I was fairly certain I would never find my way back. And let me tell you, this rabbit hole was fucking scary. How did I find myself in solitary at Rikers? I like to say it's a long story, but it really wasn't. It was the result of the dangerous combination of my own arrogance and ignorance. I've been so cocky and self-assured as I sat in the interrogation room at the FBI field office making my demands before I deigned to speak to them about what I knew. I can only imagine how stupid they thought I was. First lesson learned today. An immunity or proffer agreement didn't mean shit. I confidently signed my name, my real name, across the bottom and told the FBI the locker number and combination where they could find the notebook along with my backpack. 9 hours of questioning later, Childers had said we were done. I stood to leave, but the doors had opened and two of the New York finest had walked in. When I looked questioningly at Childers, one of the officers had said, "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit grand larceny in the first degree." He followed those chilling words with another recitation of my Miranda's rights. Second lesson learned today. If the FBI wasn't done questioning you, but didn't want to let you go because they were afraid you'll run, they contact the district attorney and have the state law charges filed against you. Childers was kind enough to explain this to me as the cold metal of the handcuffs closed around my wrist. Third lesson learned today. I didn't deserve Simon. He'd once again proven he was too good for me. As the two NYPD officers were leading me through the lobby, a distinguished-looking man in a pricey tailor suit had stopped them. "My name is Andrew Ivers," he said. "Simon Duchess has arranged for me to represent you, Miss Augustine. I apologize for not intercepting you on your way into the building this morning." I wonder if I would have listened to him even if he had stopped me earlier, but it didn't matter. What was done was done. Ivers had exchanged a few words with Childers and was up to speed within moments. He promised to be present at my arraignment. Yeah, my arraignment. It didn't get any more real than that. After a short ride in the backseat of a police car, the officers hauled me into the precinct where I was booked, fingerprinted, mugshot, the works. Then I was shuttled to central booking at the New York City Criminal Court for further processing. After being shoved into the holding cell with a dozen other women who, from the looks of them, were primarily hookers and crack addicts, I waited and waited. A few hours later, I was escorted into a courtroom that looked altogether too much like the one I had escaped from over a year before. The difference between then and now? I wasn't leaving this room a free woman. The arrangement hadn't lasted more than 5 minutes. Ivers and the prosecutors had spoken rapidly, firing words at the judge. I caught phrases like 190, 50, and remand. It was yet another code I couldn't crack. All too quickly, I was being led out of the courtroom, and Iris had followed me into a small room. His explanation of what had just happened and what was going to happen next had scared the hell out of me. I've been denied bail. Iris had argued for an astronomical figure, but given the flight risk I presented, the judge had been resolute. Nothing Iris could have said would have prepared me for the reality of being chained to the arm of another woman as the bus chugged towards Rikers, and then, upon arrival, being stripped of my clothes and my dignity. But three things he said stuck with me. First, his phone number, not that I could make calls from the bin. Second, Simon had ordered him to do whatever he could to help me. And third, I only had to endure this hell for 144 hours. Then they either had to indict me or conduct a preliminary hearing in front of a judge. 6 days? I could survive anything for 6 days. I hoped. The second bit of information was all that was holding me together at the moment. The knowledge that even though he knew everything, Simon hadn't given up on me yet, which meant I wasn't giving up either. I wanted to smile at the thought of Simon, but my busted lip hurt too much. I rested my chin on my bent knees and tried to block out the woman screaming obscenity sentence. Why? Those bad words, y'all know what obscenity, I can't pronounce it, at me from where she was locked across the hall. It hadn't taken more than 20 minutes for shit to unravel once I'd been escorted to the large bunk room type cell. I could still hear the ripples of whispers as my identity was passed from one inmate to the next. And then Bertha, as I dubbed her, had stepped up and told me that no skinny, rich poser bitch was going to look sideways at her. I was still having a what the fuck are you talking about moment when her Mack truck of a fist had connected with my cheekbone. White spots had burst in my vision, and she tackled me to the floor. The guards had been slow to pull her off me, and my scalp stung where she had ripped out a chunk of my hair. I gotten a few elbows in, but there was no question that I'd been the loser in that exchange. So we both been thrown in the bin. While it was considered harsh punishment, I was thankful to be by myself and felt relatively safe within these 4 gray concrete walls. If I was still in the bunk room, I would have been afraid to close my eyes, regardless of the fatigue dragging me under. But in here, once I blocked out Bertha's threats, I could let myself drift off to sleep. Only 142 more hours to go. Chapter 39, Simon. I stepped out of my mother's hospital room to answer my buzzing phone. Ivers. I've been waiting for him to call me all damn day. Please tell me you have good news. He cleared his throat and my stomach dropped when he hesitated before speaking. Mr. Dutchison, I would have called sooner, but I wanted to be able to give you a full picture of what we're dealing with here. What does that even mean? Unfortunately, Miss Augustin had been charged with conspiracy to commit grand larceny in the first degree and was remanded into custody following her arraignment this evening. My breath heaved out of my lungs like I've been sucker punched. I bent at the waist and tried to comprehend what the fuck Iris was saying. What do you mean, reprimanded to custody? She's in jail? Yes, Mr. Dutchison, she's at Rikers. What the fuck? His hand shook and my words echoed off the sterile white walls of the hallway. The charge nurse glared and made a cutting motion across her neck. For the second time today, I sank to the floor. Weak kneed. Can't you get her out? Mr. Dutchison, I pushed for the judge to set bail, even a ridiculous figure, and he refused. I have a meeting with Special Agent Childers tomorrow morning to discuss the information Ms. Augustin provided, and I'm hoping we can come to an agreement that will end with the state charges being dropped. We'll do everything we can to get her out as quickly as possible. Jesus Christ, what a clusterfuck. I closed my eyes and pictured Charlie in a prison jumpsuit. The dinner I choked down in the cafeteria threatened to come back up. Iris waited patiently for me to respond. Look, call me if anything changes, day or night. Don't wait next time. I don't care if you don't have the full picture or not. I want to know everything as it's happening. Of course. I ended the call, dropped my head back against the wall, and squeezed my eyes shut. Charlie was in jail, and my mother was in a coma. In a matter of days, my life had morphed into a waking nightmare. My father shuffled out of my mother's room and jerked his head toward the bench across the hall. Sit with me, he asked. I pulled myself together and joined him on the teal and yellow flower cushion. My brain started firing again, and I thought about the connections my father still had. Do you know anyone who's close with the governor of New York? His eyes widened. What happened? They arrested her. The words stuck in my throat, but I forced them out. She's in jail at Rikers. The judge denied bail. Excuse me. My dad sat back and laced his fingers together on his lap. Is there any chance you're going to change your mind about running for my old seat? I stared at him, not sure where this was going. If you tell me that you'll only get her out if I agree to run, then he unlaced his fingers, twisted towards me, and dropped a hand on my shoulder. No, I wouldn't force a choice like that on you. But the fact that you think I could makes it clear you didn't think all that highly of me right now. But that's something for another day. My point is that if there was any chance you were going to change your mind, she would make an already difficult role impassable. I'm not changing my mind. Okay, so tell me, what are we up against? His matter-of-fact acceptance, even after I insulted him, humbled me. I explained the situation, and once I finished, he rubbed a hand across his bristle jaw. Shit. Yeah, I know. Do you want to go to New York? My eyes snapped to his. I can't leave, Mom. Not now, not until we know. He nodded. I know. Well, I can't make any calls right now, but I got some ideas of whom I can contact in the morning. We'll see what we can do to get her out. And bearing that, whatever we can do to keep her safe on the inside. Whew. Chapter 40. Charlie. My 6-inch thick steel cell door swung open, and the guard motioned for me to exit. I spent 3 days in segregation, and I was starting to lose my shit. I knew I should be happy that I'd been unmolested, but 72 hours by myself gave me too damn much time to think. I mostly thought about all the places I should have run instead of New York. I bet. I've been so naive to think I could just show up, wave my magic notebook, and make everything better. Pride, growth, and all that. He led me through the maze of hallways to a guard station. It took me a few minutes, but I caught on to the fact that I was being processed for a transfer. Whether this was a good thing or a bad thing, I wasn't certain. I saw the U.S. Marshals waiting for me on the other side of the door. I decided it was a bad thing. No one bothered to correct my assumptions. We drove back to Manhattan, and my stomach knotted tighter with each mile. When they finally parked in the garage under the U.S. District Court, my dread grew. It multiplied when I was led in front of a federal magistrate judge, and he launched into his spiel. The list of charges against me was so long, I couldn't keep up as he rattled them off. Mail fraud, wire fraud, security fraud, money laundering. The charges that registered were all too familiar. My father had been convicted of them all. My very own worst case scenario was playing out in federal court. Why hadn't I just kept running? because I wanted to make things right, and maybe I would for everyone but myself. As the magistrate judge rambled on about being appointed counsel if I couldn't afford my own, I knew I needed Evers. ASAP. I needed someone to explain to me, using idiot proof words, what the fuck was going to happen to me. As soon as Evers' names entered my thought, he was pushing through the doors of the courtroom. The judge dismissed me, and Evers followed the marshals as they led me out the back. We were escorted to a small room, and Evers shut the door. He pulled out his phone and started barking orders into it. When he ended his call, he sat down next to me. My voice shook as I asked, "What the hell just happened?" In addition to conspiracy, you've been charged with several of the felonies of which your father was convicted. But why? I had nothing to do with it. Well, the information you turned over to the FBI seems to say differently. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Don't tell me her father put all that stuff in her name. My voice rose on the last words as I barely holding it together. The door opened. Shit. Cold fear snaked down my spine. Michael Drake, the assistant U.S. attorney who, here's a word. Let me highlight that. Eviscerated me on a cross-examination during my father's trial, had joined the Burn Charlie at the steak party. Well, Miss Augustine, you're looking a little different than the last time I saw you. If I weren't handcuffed, I would have been tempted to slap the smug smirk off his face. I didn't know how to respond to his taunting statement other than telling him to go fuck himself, so I kept my mouth shut. Let's cut through the BS and get down to why you're bothered to drag my client through this farce when we both know she didn't have anything to do with Augustine's scam. Drake sat down across from us. The counts in her name says otherwise. Her father put all the counts in her name. Oh my God. That's terrible. The cold fear spread from my spine to envelope my entire body like an ice straitjacket. What are you talking about? Drake's smile was triumphant. So far, we've identified several accounts in your name in the Caymans and in Switzerland, courtesy of the little book you turned over to the FBI. How is that even possible? I stammered between shallow and panting breaths. You tell me, Charlotte. Cut the crap, Erver said. Her father did it. She wasn't involved. You know it, and I know it. Besides, if she was smart enough to pull this off, why the hell would she be dumb enough to put the accounts in her own name and turn over evidence to help the FBI find them? Erver sounded so calm and self-assured, but then his entire life wasn't flashing before his eyes. I thought of the days I spent in the bin. I can't do this. I can't do this. Drake's laugh could have been used as a track for an evil movie villain. Lucky for me, I don't need to answer that question in order to send her to prison for the rest of her life. No jury on earth is going to let her walk after they see the evidence. I lunged for the garbage and threw up the rubbery chicken patty I'd been served for lunch. I dropped to my knees, gagging and spitting, resting my arms and handcuffed hands on the edge of the trash can for support. My head spun and the urge to pass out was pressing down on me. Part of me welcomed the darkness and the escape it would offer. Disgusting. Drake's snide tone pulled me out of my momentary stupor. Awareness rushed back in, along with the untapped inner reserve of strength I had. Reserve of strength. I had to get up. I was already ashamed that he brought me to my knees. Ivers crossed the room and opened the door. Could someone get us some water? I pushed up and stumbled to my feet. Ivers catching me by the arm and helping me back to my chair. A few seconds later, he pressed the styrofoam cup into my hands. I drank slowly, not wanting to puke again. I fumbled the cup to the table and took a moment to compose myself. The silence in the room was deafening, or maybe it was just the blood rushing in my ears. Finally, Ivers crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair. He continued the conversation with Drake as though nothing remarkable had happened. Are all of the accounts you've been able to identify in her name? Are all of the accounts you've been able to identify it in her name? I squeezed my eyes shut, not wanting to hear the answer that would send me running for the garbage can again. My heart thundered so loudly I almost missed Drake's self-satisfying yes. Tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them back. I was not going to let him see me cry. Do you suspect that all of the accounts are in her name? Ivers asked, his cool tone completely at odds with the damning information he was hearing. No, Drake replied, but it's a clear possibility at this point that dozens of them are. I clenched my hands together to stop the shaking. How long do you figure it's going to take you to cut through the red tape with all of these foreign banks and recover the money? Drake straightened and looked down as he spun a cufflink. It'll take some time, but we'll get there. Ivers leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. So the reason you ran down here so damn fast isn't because you want to cut a deal in exchange for Charlie's help to recover the money? Because we both know if she's the one signing the withdrawal slips and approving the wire transfers, it'll take weeks rather than months or years of red tape you'll be wading through to get it back. Drake looked bored as he said, we might be willing to discuss the possibilities. The icy grip clutching my chest receded a fraction. I reminded myself that with my recent luck, a deal could still mean many years in prison, if not decades. I held completely still, as if afraid any movement from me would derail whatever ground Ivers had just gained. Recovery of the funds from the accounts you identified in her name, but only if the subject bank is willing to cooperate, in exchange for full dismissal of charges with prejudice, and no refiling of any state or federal charges arising out of it or related to any aspect of Augustine's scheme, Ivers said. Full recovery of the funds? Drake shot back with interest. Even a partial recovery is going to approach the original amount Augustine took, and she can only get you money from accounts in her name identified by the FBI, and only if the bank cooperates. She can't agree to things that are outside of her control. Drake leaned back in his chair, taking his time to mull over Ivers' words as if my future wasn't hanging in the balance. I don't know, Drake drawled. Ivers went in for the kill. Would you prefer the media know that the DOJ has the ability to recover the money right now, and it's considering throwing that advantage away and taking years to accomplish the same result because it wants to prove a point by locking up one innocent girl? Drake's features were carved in stone. I held my breath as Ivor and I waited for his response. Let me make a call. Drake rose and left the room. I sucked in a huge breath and looked over at Ivers. Is this really going to work? Ivers didn't hesitate, yes. Sweet relief rushed through me for a beat before another thought struck me. Do I have to go back to Rikers? Because I don't know if I can handle that. He bit his bottom lip. The action was decidedly at odds with his expensive suit and air of confidence. After a moment, he shook his head. I can't imagine the feds are going to let you out of their sight now that we know you're effectively the key to recovering the money. It's much more likely that They'll stash you somewhere in protective custody. If this gets out, people will kill to get to you. They can't risk that happening. Then I asked a question that had been reverberating through my head since Drake had dropped the bomb about the accounts being in my name. I didn't set up any of those accounts, so how could they possibly be in my name? Ivor's expression was sympathetic when he said, I really think that's the question for your father, Charlotte. We sat in heavy, awkward silence while we waited for Drake to return, and waited and waited. Finally, the door to the room swung open and Drake strolled back in, expression unreadable. He crossed his arms over his chest, and once again I held my breath. You've got a deal. And that's the end of chapter 40. OMG. So all this time, you feeling guilty about what your father did, and your father put all of these accounts in your name. Whoa, I would be pissed. And so he taking you down right along with him, or he trying to put all of it on you. My goodness, I didn't see that one coming. That was a curveball. I hope she get out of it. I really do. So that's all I got for this chapter. I was really shocked that her father put it in her name. And I meant to say, I hope Simon Mothers pulled through too, because that's so sad. He can't have both his women of his life, messed up. So there was one word. Let me go and get it. And it is Eviscerated. So let me go and see what the definition of this word is and how it's pronounced, because I never seen this word before and I don't know the definition of it. Okay. Definition. It doesn't give me how to pronounce it. Let me see if I can try it again without the D. Oh, here we go. Let me put the D back. Take the D out. Eviscerate. Ooh, eviscerated. So it means disembowel. Let me do it without the E. D.
Eviscerate.
Okay, it's a verb. And again, it's still disemboweled. Okay. All right, well, let me say that one more time. Eviscerate. Okay, so that's the word. And that's all I have for this chapter. See you in the next chapter, which is going to be chapter 41. And from that, we have just 6 chapters left, 41 through 46. So we get to see how everything's going to unfold. See y'all in the next chapter. Bye.